Hey folks, Wade here at the Salty Shores shop. Thought I would kind of do an intro here. Again, it's probably been way too long since I had my mug on the actual camera. So, welcome to North Carolina. It's been kind of a long haul, um, but some unexpected events between hurricanes and literally tornadoes and smashed up hangars. And of course, this workshop itself, once I moved down here, had a lot of overhauls to do. Unexpectedly, had to replace the roof, and so still tweaking it, and it's getting there. One of the things I wanted to talk about, this video is really an introduction to a new piece of equipment that I have, which is a plasma cutter, a plasma cutting table, actually, I should say, that's combined with the plasma cutter. It's the Langmuir Systems Crossfire Pro, which is the next generation of the Crossfire. The Crossfire Pro is basically a 3-foot by 4-foot wide table, and I'll show that a little bit more. I'm going to have a string of videos showing the initial steps of dialing it in and tweaking it and all that. I kind of wanted to cover my build philosophy, my modus operandi, if you will. I know it seems quite a while since I've done anything on the airplane, because it has, and then I know a lot of folks have kind of asked me on the sly, hey, what's going on with this shop and the build and all that? When are you going to get back on the airplane? So why am I so hell-bent on getting what is seemingly just a bunch of toys in this shop? And it kind of goes back quite a long time ago. My older brother and I were having a conversation about what, personality types, and are you the type when it comes to dominoes? Do you line up all the dominoes and then knock them all over? Make sure everything's perfect. Are you extreme type A, which of course I ran into a lot when I was in the military? You set one domino up and you just immediately knock it over. I've typically thought of myself as the type of person that sets up a few to a dozen and knocks those over and then moves on to the next thing. So this effort that I'm involved in with this shop probably seems like I'm lining up an endless stream of dominoes that are preventing me from getting to the airplane build. But since this is the first time I've actually been in a shop that I've had enough room and space to actually outfit it the way I want to, and because I'm retired from the military now, I know I'm not going to be immediately moving again. So it's not a makeshift shop, it's a permanent shop. And so I don't want to get into a situation where I'm building on the airplane and then I need a new capability and I have to make room and move things around and stop the build. Once I start this build, I want to continue on until it's pretty much finished. And so the whole again, I'll use the term modus operandi, the method of designing and modeling and then having repeatable capabilities to build components. I saw a lot of this beginning with my super good friend Marco, as he started down the road of machining, and I've picked up so much from him, and I'm thankful to him. Thanks, brother. And so once you go down that road, and I had this discussion recently with my another build buddy of mine, Dave Barinholtz. He's down in Australia. He's doing a great job. He's about finished with his long easy, just kicking butt and taking names. But I had this discussion with him about, once you go down the road of modeling things and either be a 3D printing and then taking that cheap part and then constantly revising it and then being able to machine it out of metal. Once you do that, you really don't want to go back to the one-off method of making things and what I used to do in the Neanderthal fashion of machining, and with a hacksaw and a drill and maybe a saber saw, cutting out aluminum and then just hand carving it. So I want to have this shop up and running as far as the machine capabilities with the mill and the lathe. I've got the 3D printer pretty much online. I've got a couple tweaks on that, but that's not going to hold me back. And then the plasma cutter, the plasma cutting table, that whole ability. I have a lot of components. I have a list of probably 25 to 30 components that, with the modifications and design of my airplane, as I'm nearing the end of the build, which I actually am, the airframe components will probably be done in 2 to 3 months as far as the major components, and probably another month or two for the the finite modifications and tweaks that I have to do. As an aside, because not surprisingly, my local airport where I did have a hangar, the new hangar, the new builds on the new hangars, as far as the construction, excuse me, that's going to be now, not this summer. It's going to be next summer because of probably the coronavirus, and then just other delays as well, contractual and insurance, and justifying new hangars and all that. So I'm really targeting next September, not this September, but next September. I'm planning on flying my airplane to Rough River. That's the plan. I'll have a hangar by that point, and that gives me time to do what I need to do. Not that I wouldn't want it sooner, but I'm not even going to have a place to house my airplane if I finish it, hypothetically 4 months from now. Or I would have to house it somewhere quite a distance from where I am now. So with that, this is again an intro video actually to the Langmuir Systems Crossfire Pro plasma cutting table. I'm going to turn the camera around and discuss that briefly. And again, there'll be a string of videos for those of you that are just looking for my information as far as building on the airplane. That it's still a few weeks out, probably, for the most part. It's raining right now. It's been raining cats and dogs for the last few days, so that's kind of why I decided I would hunker down and finish up these videos. And I'm going to do a huge blog post that this is going to be a part of. So this has been off and on over the last 6 weeks. This has been a concerted effort on getting some modifications that I found to be very critical for the plasma cutting table, and I'll point those out. But I've been receiving the 3 different boxes, significant components of the plasma cutting table, and a couple of other odd components that came very early on, about 8 weeks ago. But I've been receiving these big boxes of the different components, and you'll see that on the blog. I'll point those out. But I've been receiving those over the last 6 weeks. I've been constructing this intermittently as the different parts have rolled in. Last Wednesday I got the last big crate, which actually had all the frame pieces for the plasma cutting table, and I constructed that. And then I welded up the lower shelf, which is not stock, and added that to it. So without further ado, we'll get to it. So once again, welcome to the Salty Shores shop down in North Carolina. Again, this is an overview of my Langmuir Systems Crossfire Pro plasma cutting table. I'm going to use a pointer to point out some of the features. This right down here is my Prime Weld Cut 60 plasma cutter. I would say it's a B+ plasma cutter. It works pretty good. It's a lot cheaper, about a quarter of the cost of what would be considered the Primo version of a home plasma cutter, which is the Hypertherm 45 XP. That happens to be the model that Marco has. It's a beautiful machine. But since I went with some other mods and upgrades and the table itself, I decided to go starting off with a more medium grade plasma cutter that'll do the job, and then I'll probably upgrade at some point later on if I feel I need to. part of those upgrades, I'll just point out, let me move the camera up a little bit, is this machine torch, which gives you a more aligned vertical straight cut. So you have a higher quality cut on all your your different plasma cuts. And then this breakaway magnetic torch, just in case the machine torch crashes into a part that it's called a tilt up. It will not damage the torch, which these torches can be pretty expensive. Let me go over the table just a little bit. This is the new version, the second generation for Langmuir Systems. The first table was the Crossfire. It was basically a 2 foot by 2 foot table. The major difference is that on the Crossfire, this X-axis gantry was cantilevered out. It stopped about right in here, and then there was no support. Where on the Crossfire Pro, instead of about a 2.5 foot table, it's a 4 foot wide table, about 3 foot deep, and it has this extra Y-axis gantry right here that goes back and forth, which also, of course, supports the other end of the X-axis gantry. It also has this system. Let me move the camera up. Actually, let me move it in closer so you can see what I'm talking about. With this stepper motor right there, that creates a movable Z-axis, so this can actually move up and down. I will, of course, demonstrate that in at least 1 or 2 videos. So with this Z-axis stepper motor, this system has what's called torch height control, so it consistently keeps this plasma cutting torch right about 60 thousandths above whatever material you're cutting. Especially on thinner material, as you're cutting, you can imagine the heat starts warping the material, and so that torch height control keeps the torch exactly where it's supposed to be above the metal being cut. All this area down here, where the shelf that the plasma cutter itself is sitting on, this water reservoir, which allows me to drain the water when I'm not using the table down into the reservoir, and then through this valve right here, and pneumatic pressure allows me to then put the water back up into the table just prior to use, and so then I can just keep cycling it. I have some filters, and then I have a valve right there that allows me to to drain the water, but also, again, these filters allow me to clean the water. This shelf right here is completely modification. So I ordered all this metal together, the aluminum diamond plate, and then the actual pieces for the shelf structure, and I welded that up, and then I drilled the holes in two in each leg, and put some rib nuts in there, and then bolted the table. Now the shelf is actually loosely connected so that it doesn't try to pull in the different legs and bind them in a way that will create any type of tension on the upper part of the table to draw it out of square or level or what have you. So the other part, you can see all the plumbing down here. That was another modification I did. I'm going to pick the camera up here. I put a lot bigger drains. There's two, because this water table, as you can see, there's a seam down the middle. When it's shipped, I guess for cost cutting purposes on the shipping, to really reduce the shipping cost, the water table, which is stainless steel, was shipped in two halves, and then you join it together. But those drains that I just showed you, I bought those at Lowe's. I'll show you again real quick. I bought these at Lowe's. They're actually drains for like a bar sink, so they're not quite as big as a regular sink drain, but they're a lot higher volume as far as draining, and then of course putting the water back up into the table. But so I actually drilled out, and you'll see that on this latest blog post. You'll see where I drilled out the holes from the stock drains, which were about 3/8 inch in diameter, and I drilled those out and put in the new drains. I did buy an optional stand that rotates around for a laptop, and I wasn't sure if I was going to use it on this table or not, because I thought I might use it over by the mill and the lathe, because I need to use a laptop to drive those and as a CNC controller. But then I found that I can also drive this from the PC that's in the shop. I found that I wasn't able to actually get a good view of the table from that vantage point. So if I'm actually trying to get on the edge or the corner of a piece of material to set the Z-Axis to, kick the program off, I just didn't have the vantage point. So I ended up installing that, obviously, as far as the laptop stand, and it's been working out good. I enjoy it. The last thing I'm going to point out, is this module right down here. That's on the side of my plasma cutter. That is a voltage sensing device that is really actually the heart of the torch height control for this system. Now that is an option. You don't have to get the torch height control if you buy a Crossfire Pro. That was one of the primary features that I decided to go with the Pro, because of that torch height control feature, and then the stabilization that was offered by this extra Y-axis gantry tube, which of course stabilized the far end of the X-axis gantry tube. So again, I'll point out real quick because I just noticed them. I also upgraded the inserts on each leg, and then these they're knockoffs, but they're Footmaster. They're both rubber pads for heavy machinery, and they're both rollers. You can move the pads up, screw those up out of the way, and then roll the table around. The smaller Crossfire table comes with actual casters, but for some reason the Crossfire Pro, it does not have casters stock. So it's a common upgrade or a modification that a lot of folks are doing. And I will say that 90% of these modifications that I did to this table, I didn't just dream up on my own. I found them on the Langmuir Systems forum where folks were doing these mods, and then I, of course, did my version of those mods, but that's it. Okay, I'll shut up now. That's the new capability in the shop. I've got some voltage issues that I'm dealing with that I may have to deal with Langmuir Systems. Beyond that, just wanted to go over and do an introduction on this new capability. All right, thanks. Cheers.